You never want any dead air, do you? But you're never precisely sure at the exact moment that everyone joins the call. It's a tricky thing to manage, guys. Hi, welcome. What a treat to this technical webinar number 9. Some people are outside your org. I mean, thank you, teams, but that is literally the entire point of doing this, to be fair. It barely feels like a month ago since we did the last one of these, but here we are. Time will beat us all in the end. What a philosophical note for a Wednesday afternoon. We have an absolute treat for you today. We're going to hear what's happened in the last month from product owner extraordinaire John Cooper himself. Gareth Tilley is going to update us with beta and our continuing program of engagement. As always, by the way, please do stick any questions into the chat and we will answer them as we go if we can, or we will answer questions at the end, no problem at all. John Harrod Booth, the man himself, is going to, I couldn't believe we got him for this either, to be honest, is going to talk about the release schedule. That is more interesting than it sounds. Work with me here, guys. We've got Jonathan from the team. I believe it's his long-time listener, first-time attendee on this side of the webinar. We've not actually got him in the room yet, would you believe? But hopefully he'll be with us by the time we get to that section to give us. I'm really pleased with what we've done with the guidance documentation, and he's going to speak to that. Then some guy, don't know, will lead us through the Q&A, and then Dr. Tilley will take us home. Now, I can see there's various things going on in the chat while I'm talking on Thursday afternoon. Yeah. Well, that's what Easter do to you, isn't it? It's pleasant because normally it's Wednesday and I'm thinking it's Thursday. So it's a good week for me if it's Thursday and I'm thinking it's Wednesday. Right. Okay. Gareth. No, sorry. I'm all over the place, aren't I? John Cooper, product owner extraordinaire. What would you like to tell us? I'm in a windowless room. I'm in a dark windowless room in the Great Minster House. No power cut. It's just the way they set up these meeting rooms. I thought I'd use this background, but I'll treat you to the full glory of the meeting room, lads. Why not? Right, John Cooper. Get this back on the rails.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. John from the digital projects team. I'm the product owner, as you know. Just like to do a quick run through what we've been doing since our last webinar, which was at the end of March. Just a few days, in fact, after the webinar, we launched the version 3.4 in our integration environment. Apologies if this was not quite at the time we'd said it would be, but we did do pretty well in getting it out. And we also got the documentation out for it, albeit a couple of days later than promised. We have been letting that sit in integration. It's been getting a small amount of attention. We know, though, that from having talked to all the major digital solution providers, that they are ramping up their ability to really get on. And this now ties into our programmed launch of version 3.4 with all the improvements that we discussed in the last webinar on Monday, the 28th of April. So this is a landmark point of the project. We aren't going to go through in all the detail again what exactly is in 3.4. You need to look at the GitHub notes, release schedule and everything. Even review last month's webinar on the YouTube playlist if you want further information on that. Speaking of GitHub, just a shout out for that, because we do still use it for all the major issue raising, and we deal with issues that have been raised by providers and others and try to do it in a timely and thorough way. This continues and will be the case ongoing through the project. As you know, the secondary legislation consultation finished about a week before the last webinar, and we did call that out at that point. This is still being compiled and response being prepared, and I don't think there's a publicly available release date for anything off that, but needless to say, everyone's working very hard on that, and you will eventually see the outcomes, which will manifest themselves mainly in the draft legislation program for the secondary regulations. So watch this space, and hopefully by the next webinar, we'll be able to say something more about that. Another one of our strands of support is the FAQ. We just released today, or I believe the latest version is up. This summarizes from the last webinar and possibly previous technical webinar as well. But we've been hard at work to improve and edit and add to that document. Just like to finish with a quick run through what actual work we've been doing on the development side on the project, because that's our core day-to-day job on this. We've been hard at work preparing the full service onboarding portal, by which I mean that when we go full version of this, it'll be a smoother onboarding to create accounts and manage your applications and everything, rather than the largely manual process that existed in private beta. We're also developing information pages ranging from full gov.uk portal page to incorporating the information that's contained on our GitHub repos, our YouTube playlist, our TCF website into a single all-serving portal to be on a domain name to be confirmed. But that's all being lined up too, and we'll be hard at work still doing that in the coming month or two. So another thing that's also been going on is improving the help and guidance on the project. And Johnny will talk about later the conversion from a Word document to an HTML linked, fully hyperlinked document that will be released fairly shortly. We haven't got an exact date, but it's going to be a much smoother experience. And when it's actually embedded into that information portal just described, you'll have a lot better journey through reading the user guide. Other documentation will probably also be converted into this format, and I believe John Harrod is going to touch on that a bit later. But we just wanted also to reach out to you as the community in the technical part of this to see what you think about receiving help. So I'm just going to put in the chat a link to a Mentipoll. Get ready with the Mentimeter app or click on the link when I post it. The code I will also put in. Just bear with me 1 second. Putting that now in the chat. This is live, and we'll come back to it about when we go into the Q&A a bit later. There's just one question, and it's like a multiple choice question. Indicate your preferred routes to receiving help on the project. There's a number of options. If we haven't covered anything that you want, then add it in the chat, and we can add that feedback in later. But that's all from me on an update of what we've been doing on the project and the project. So it's back to Paul to on with the webinar.
Thank you, John. Yeah, welcome to the DFT focus rooms in Great Minster House. As you can see, a complete lack of windows. So here we are. One thing I meant to say was you may be wondering why we're not in public beta yet. There's a bit of a sort of administrative holdup outside the project, nothing to do with the technical side of it or anything. But as soon as we can go into public beta, we will do, and you guys will be the first to know when we do have a date for that. So with that out of the way, let me pass over to Gareth Tilley, ladies and gentlemen. Didn't you do all this at the last webinar, this stuff?
Thanks, Paul. Yes, but we're very conscious that we've got quite a lot of new people joining these webinars, which is great. I'm not going to run through this in detail, as you said. We covered this last time, so you can feel free to look at the previous webinar, which is on YouTube, our YouTube playlist. But I did want to, for any new joiners, just a very quick recap. It's an API-first service, so we've got the English extracts of TROs being published digitally to the service, and then data consumers can then access that data. We've got a data specification to support all that, which comprises lots of things, including like the data model, the JSON schema, and various example files as well. And these webinars, the purpose of these technical webinars is very much for us to kind of improve that data specification and feedback how those changes are happening. And we get that kind of information from a variety of channels through you as the users. So GitHub, John's mentioned, but we've got user research, one-to-one sessions, and just when we see people face-to-face at conferences and things like that. So I just wanted to outline that again. More detail was provided at the previous webinar. And then just a quick summary. People will be familiar with this style of slide. What I did want to highlight on this slide, though, is we're approaching 13,000 digital TROs now in the service. So that's really great news, and that's increasing on a daily basis. And what that means is, what I'm going to cover on this slide is really, in terms of the engagement, we're increasingly seeing a lot more engagement, and what we're doing in the program is around working with data consumers. We've got a lot of people working at a variety of different use cases for that data now, which is great. Now we've got all these TROs in the service. So some of that is around enforcement. So that will be use cases around reducing strikes for bridges, so for railway bridges, for example. Bus lane enforcement as well, getting that data in from TROs where that's enforceable. We're talking to people about automation and network management as well. So people who have UTMC systems, so that's in local authorities to get smooth running of the road network, getting TRO data, D-TRO data into those systems. Also, people who've got management of bus real-time systems as well, where there's a road closure. We've got obviously the information on the diversion routes, diversion planning, and that then can be used in terms of bus scheduling, for example. We've also had dialogue with blue light services. So again, you can imagine how critical it is for them to understand any road closures when they're doing their dispatching. So that's a kind of critical use case for everyone, really. So we're really developing dialogue around that. And then the other thing I did want to highlight, we've had some really useful discussion with industry experts, just how we're managing the service and how we're managing in particular aspects of the service like version control, backward compatibility as we make changes to the data specification moving forward. So we've had some really good and great dialogue on that over the last month as well. So that's a variety of the engagement we're doing at the moment. Particularly if you've got any use cases to add to that list, if you're a data consumer, and we'd be really keen to ramp up that engagement, and please reach out to us and we can schedule a call and just work with you to ensure the data and you're getting that what you need from the service as much as possible. That's what I wanted to cover, Paul, just as a highlight of the engagement we've been doing over the last month.
I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Gareth. I actually really enjoyed that in the end. Talking of things you don't think you'll enjoy, but then you turns out you do. I was lucky enough to have the company of John Harrod Booth last night, actually. But anyway, enough about that. We move on to the exciting topic of the release schedule.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm John Harrod Booth, as pre-announced. I get to do a bit of the sort of more technical stuff. So it is a technical webinar, and I'll deal with a couple of different topics. One is addressing this. So in the previous webinar, technical webinar, you'll have seen a version of this, which is us trying to address the question of releasing new versions of the data specification into both the integration environment and the production environment, retiring older versions, and getting ourselves into a more regularized pattern. So as you go towards the bottom of that table, if you're smart and clever, you'll figure out that we expect versions to be around for 6 months before they get retired and replaced by something else. So moving to a more regularized release pattern. We had at the end of March, we had several versions alive in both production and the integration environment. So we've already removed 3.2.1 and 3.2.3, and we were planning in a few days' time to also remove 3.2.4, but we've done due diligence on that. We've seen what the current usage is, and we've spoken to the service providers and TRAs who are still using that, and they've said, could you give us a little bit more time, please, in their migration across to 3.3.0 and 3.4. And so so we're going to change that deprecation date in both the integration and production environment to allow a little bit more time. That conversation with the data suppliers, whether that's a digital service provider or a TRA, is ongoing on a constant basis. And so you'll focus on the boxes that say May, TBC, and it is TBC because that's part of the dialogue. So we are working towards that end, but it's obviously a dialogue. We have to be sympathetic with where you are with your developments. So 3.4 is live in the integration environment already, and in 4 days' time we'll go live in production. And so it will be nice to see more records coming through using that in due course. Next slide, please. Sorry for the size of the text, but I wanted to show you. First comment is that we haven't had a huge raft of comments come back. We've had one or two, and we of course attempt to address those, whether they're bugs or requests for changes that are coming through. And I'm going to show you an example, which is that TfL a couple of days ago raised what they're trying to do with things that aren't immediately evident as to how they can be done in the existing model. I'll start off with this table, which is relatively dense, and I'll talk you through it. Everything that TfL have put in this table is correct as far as I'm concerned. So they have on the leftmost column some sort of regulatory concept that they're trying to reflect in their records. So disabled persons bay, taxi bay, bus bay, whatever it might be. And then they've said, okay, we're going to use a regulation type called curbside parking place for all of those, but then applying different forms of condition against those. And I think what they've done in terms of how they've modeled this is entirely right. So you can sort of work through this table. I'm not going to suggest we do a worked example right now, but and you can see the sort of logic behind it. And I've certainly suggested that as part of some of the activities I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes, that this sort of model of, if you are trying to address a particular thing like a taxi bay, for example, then there is a pattern that could reasonably be followed here, and to try and introduce that more into best practice guidance. But I'll come back to that in due course. that was a relatively dense slide, and I really apologise for the next one. I should get shot for the next one, but next slide, please. The other part of the TfL email was saying, okay, how do we address things like, and if you follow your way down the bullets, diplomatic bays, electric vehicle bays, solo electric motorcycle bays, electric taxi bays, cycle hire bays, red route bus stop clearways, disabled person bays, which are mixed use, so loading and disabled person bays, and an interesting concept called borough bays. I don't think I'd ever come across before. And so I only really started looking in this detail yesterday, and the stuff in yellow is where I would say, yeah, okay, there is something that we probably need to do to the data specification and the data model to tweak it to enable this to happen. So, for example, with the top one, with diplomatic bays, the obvious thing to do is to add a vehicle type that says this is a diplomatic vehicle, and that will enable you to specify that sort of condition. Taking an example of the electric vehicle, but I'm not going to go through all of these, by the way, but just taking an example. So in terms of the electric vehicle bay, can we do this at the moment in terms of how we qualify the model? Yeah, largely we can. The D-TRO specification doesn't have a vehicle type called electric vehicle. What it does have is fuel types. So we have a fuel type called battery, but we also have other fuel types such as PHEV, so it's a plug-in hybrid, or a EEV. And so we can provide that sort of qualification. What we can't do, which if you look at the TfL definition of what an electric vehicle bay is there for, is if I just read it out, it says an electric vehicle power is wholly or partially derived from electric storage battery to be parked solely for the purpose of charging that vehicle's battery or batteries whilst connected to a charging point. And what we cannot do in the model at the moment is that statement of saying there is a condition that says this must be connected to a charging. So we need to introduce that sort of thing. And that actually applies to quite a number of these examples that TfL have provided. So there are a number of things of this sort of nature which are coming in. TfL have been very useful in providing some. Acqueway have provided some others. We are very much open for business. If there are TROs that you don't think you can qualify at the moment, please let us know. Our preferred route is to do that via GitHub, but you can do it via the CSO D-TRO mailbox, which Gareth will talk to you about at the end. But we're really open for business at trying to deal with these things and to try to flex the data specification to enable you to really be able to code everything. So that's just really to show an example. These things, as it stands in 3.4, the yellow bits can't be done at the moment. We are thinking about introducing a minor update. So there would be no significant change in the sort of structure of the model and the data model and the specification, but just really adding additional things into some of the lists that exist. We haven't fixed a view yet on when that might occur, let's say within the next couple of months, but it would be a minor update. But that is on the cards, and undoubtedly in future webinars and communications, we'll come back with more specific details on that. Next slide, please. So Johnny Smythe is going to talk to you next about some work that we've been on the HTML user guide documentation. But just as an introduction to that, we've also had feedback that has come from some of the digital service providers who said, could you supply us snippets of code that illustrate particular types of regulation? So the example I've picked out here is from a document that John Cooper and I are currently developing. It's not just a document. because we will also produce example files that map to these. So every example where we have a snippet, such as the one that's on the screen at the moment, will also have an example file alongside it. The example that we've got on the screen at the moment is for a band movement, a no U-turn. And the snippet, which is on the screen, and I apologize, it probably isn't very legible, but it really just highlights the key fields that have to be populated to achieve the end of coding this up. Now, this is a bit different to what you find in the data model user guide, which really just talks you through the structure of the data model and what the attributes are and how they're expected to be filled, because this really takes us into the realm of saying, well, we reasonably might expect you to try and tackle coding a TRO with this sort of provision and regulation in it in this sort of way. It's not prescriptive, but it hopefully will form a basis that derives some common best practice. And once we have this there and available, of course, we're absolutely open to people coming back and saying, well, we wouldn't normally do it this way, we'd do it some other way, and it will evolve over time. We're also expecting that this document in itself will become HTML based and they're available in the same sort of way that the HTML user guide would be, quite probably the cross-linked as well. So that's just talking about something that we're currently working on, and we'll come back. I expect that we will be able to publish this out in the next couple of weeks, and we'll certainly let you know when that's happening. And I'm just about to hand over to Johnny Smythe if he's available. Next slide, please.
Could we pause for a question, JHB, while we've got you? With regards to the geospatial file, are you still looking at a standard GIS file format for those who want to self-publish rather than using a DSP? And maybe John Cooper wants to come in there as well. Oh, he's already on camera. Goodness me.
Yeah, perhaps I'll say something first, Paul, on that. Yeah, we're still working on the minimum viable product of the D-TRO service. So we're building to the JSON schema and accept files in JSON format that adhere to our current data specification, which John's explaining here and everything. We hold in our backlog for future phase of the work going on through the next, year or so to explore whether we can develop the ability to accept and publish, allow the extraction of data in other formats that have been mentioned in previous webinars. So that's still on the table for us to do. We will be able to advise on timelines and if and when we are actually doing it in future webinars.
Just to add a little bit more to that, I can't be specific in terms of dates and what have you, because as John said, it's within our backlog. But we have developed a geo-packaged version of the data structure. We've shared that with Ordnance Survey, who've provided some comment back, and we have considered or started to consider what that would mean in terms of practical software deployment for the service. So there is a work in progress. It's moving forward, but as John said, we have to try and balance where we spend our resources and time. So it's progressing as we are able to progress it. Okay, Paul, over to you, or do we go to Johnny? That's a bit worrying. I'll just let Paul back into the meeting. Johnny.
Hello.
Oh.
Have we got Johnny on the call now?
Yes, I believe so.
Well, he put a message in the chat saying his Wi-Fi signal had dropped out, and then the DFT are conducting a fire alarm test at 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon, and I got kicked out of the call when the fire alarm test started, almost as if all of the available bandwidth had to be spent on the test or something. Very weird. Johnny, if you're there, pop up and say hello. But there is more stuff going on in the chat. So there was a question, more for John Cooper, I guess. It was around can anyone test? Like, so if have Westminster Council, for instance, been involved in the testing, John Cooper? Not that I know of. And how does someone get involved while we're still in private beta?
No, I don't think we have Westminster, but well, whilst we are still in private beta, I think we would be open to selected few more testers to come on, either as publisher or as a data consumer, or even both. Drop us a line to the D-TRO email, and we can explore that.
This geo package version is causing some interest. Are we in a position to share that in some sort of form, or if not, when might we?
I don't think I'd feel comfortable to share the version we have right now, which was very developmental. I think with a small amount of work, possibly in this sprint, maybe leaching into the next sprint, then yes, we should be able to. There is, of course, a consideration, which is having a geopackage format for input and possibly external export is all very well in concept, but if we don't have the capability to do that, it's a bit mute. So, and currently we don't have the capability to do that. So that is something that needs to be addressed from a software service delivery viewpoint. But yeah, we should be able to, within a couple of weeks, we should be able to share a version of what that file structure would look like.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, JHB. Do we have Jonathan there available? I'm going to call an audible John Cooper if we don't, and say, can we go back to your Menti at this point?
Yeah, sure. I can't see him in the call again, actually, Paul. He's disappeared. But yeah, let me share my screen if I can.
Maybe his fire alarm was being tested as well.
Can everyone see the screen?
I certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I just talk through it, maybe if you haven't done it, still time, it's still open. We're just asking you what types of help and technical support you prefer to have. And the options we thought of were case studies, which can be like, here's an example of how you do something, or how someone else has done something and what they have done with the data. The code snippets is what JHB was discussing in his slot. Email is just, you like to email us with your specific question and have us investigate it for you. So the example files is an ever expanding section of our work. And as John's been saying, we're going to have a lot more coming up. GitHub is our residual place where all issues are exposed and open for discussion. Even when they're closed, you can still find the issues, and there's a library of information there. We close them down though when we believe we've answered your questions. Videos, obviously our webinars are recorded and saved to YouTube, but we are planning on doing more video support in terms of showing you how to do something. And then the written guidance, all this good stuff that we are working on with this conversion of Word to HTML, and that's only just going to expand. So it looks like there's clear preferences for the example files and that written guidance, with a good showing for videos. So thanks for all your answers on that. It's good to that we can reach out to you for some ad hoc user research every now and again.
Yeah, thank you, John Cooper. Some good conversation in the chat, or some good chat in the conversation about someone asked, when will it become a legal requirement to use the D-TRO service? the consultation response is currently being reviewed, essentially. I'd love nothing more than to tell you what our current thinking is, but I can't preempt the consultation. As soon as the policy team have something concrete that the minister's signed off or whatever has to happen, I think essentially the new regs will get laid, or the regs will get laid, and that will tell you. But obviously we will publicise that and talk about it as soon as we can. The other thing going on in the chat was around what is required to be shared in D-TRO, that common FAQ. So if as it appears, height restrictions, I always get these two things confused. If height restrictions aren't part of orders, then, yes, it's not a legal requirement to share them. But if you have it in the same system, maybe you don't, but if you do have it in the same system, same as yellow box junctions and stuff, send it across to us,
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll go on, John Cooper.
Yeah, I think there's a question that we've improved, or it was a new question maybe in the latest FAQ on this, and we have referred to a list of. There is a list in TSRGD, I believe, that says the ones that don't need a TRO, or we've linked to it somewhere in that FAQ to try and help to work this out. But yeah, if you have the data, we'll still be able to accept the data, even if it isn't a mandatory requirement to send it in, because there's no TRO. So we envisage there being lots of additional information that we can hold. That's just, and the fact that it's not in a TRO doesn't matter.
That's the spirit, JC. Is there anyone in the team who would like to speak to the slides that Jonathan was going to present around? Looks like just in the nick of time, he's here.
Apologies.
No worries. Can someone please screen share? Gareth, if you were doing that before, do it again. Johnny, the floor is yours.
Right, no problem. I'll screen share. I do apologise on transport, which was actually totally ahead of schedule, which was good. So I'll just share my screen of what we'll be doing with the Word documentation. So obviously the Word documentation for 3.4 was as a Word document. We wanted to make it more interactive and a product that you could open up on your browser. So what we did was export it and convert it into basically a navigatable web page. So we'll have each of the navigation bars, but like a website with its search feature as well. So you can pop in words and it'll populate through that for certain elements. We've got pop-out diagrams that'll be so you can zoom in and look at these diagrams, which again, I guess the next version will be linked directly into the UML. There is a UML link. The product will sit in GitHub and be published like a web page with a link to it. So everybody will have access to it, and you'll be able to view the data model interactively through the web flow as well. So again, we're working on the future automation of it as well, so it's continually up to date as well. So we're like a bit of a future ask as well, and hopefully, it'll be easier to maintain and up to date, and easier to access as well. You'll be able to download and zip it as well, so you can open it locally and things like that. So just making it more accessible to everybody, and that's what we've been working on as well, to get the connectivity and make sure that teams can get in and find what they need from example the UML diagram. That's everybody excited?
Well, the question that people are asking is, when is this page going to be available?
Working with John Cooper on launching it fairly shortly. So we just want to make sure review it, make sure everything from diagrams is up to date and everything's aligned with the latest version. And once that's done, we will create a release date, and it'll be published, and everybody will be able to jump on and digest it.
Yeah, I think more precisely, we are working on this in the current sprint, and
Yep.
we should be then able to launch in the following sprint. So we'll be into May, but hopefully not too far in, and we will let you know when it's coming out.
So we talk about these sprints. So it's a 2-week period. So if we say the next one, then it can't be more than 4 weeks away at the most, as it were, essentially. Johnny, could you paint us a picture as well for the viewers at home? Where are you travelling from and to? What woods is your neck in? That might be too much for Johnny's Wi-Fi signal, potentially, guys. I've been overly ambitious there. Gareth Tilley, bring us home. Should we tell Gareth he's on mute? It seems cruel not to, doesn't it, Gareth?
Thanks, Paul. Just getting the slides back up. Thanks. Yeah. Just usual stuff on comms. As people know, key channel for us for the technology side of things is the GitHub page. I know people are familiar with that. And then all these webinars, they are recorded, and we do have our YouTube channel that covers both these technical webinars, but also our wider webinars as well. Engagement program. So we've got our ongoing regular engagement with touchpoint meetings with regular various folk. So we're obviously continuing them. And like I said, we're looking to expand them very much with data consumers over the next period as well. We'll be doing our next webinar. We still haven't got a date for that. That's is tied to the consultation and when that's going to be released. So, but watch this space, and we'll give people good notification of when our general webinar number 8 will be coming to you. And then in terms of conferences, we're going to be at the Transport Technology Forum in Leicestershire. That's in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, that's in May 7th and 8th in Leicestershire. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you there. We're also presenting on the service at ITS Europe, and we've got a couple of sessions we're engaged with there. One is on the actual service itself and the technical approach we've used to deliver that. So we're showing that as a kind of piece of good practice. And then we've also got a session with colleagues from across Europe. So our friends from Norway and from the Netherlands as well. So it's kind of looking at the different approaches going on across Europe, and of course us in England as well. So there are 2 conferences we're attending in May. And then finally, I just wanted to flag the kind of further information. People know about the page on the Transport Technology Forum. GitHub, we've already discussed. And then, as JHB mentioned earlier in the presentation, if you need to get in touch with us via email, then our email address is just simply dtro@dft.gov.uk. If you need us, we're here to help, here for support. So please do reach out if you need to. Thanks for that. Paul, back to your good self.
Thanks, Gareth. Yeah, it's due to be quite hot in Seville in the end of May, I think. So do spare a thought for us, sweating it out while you're over here having the time of your lives. No worries at all, Johnny. Okay, gang. If there's no more questions, and I think all the questions in the chat have been answered, we can sign off. I look forward to seeing you at the Transport Technology Forum. If you're going along, come and say hello. If not, maybe we'll see you at the next webinar, be it technical or regular. Take care of yourselves and stay frosty out there, guys.